Hey, welcome, fellow human beings, to the podcast Addiction Abuse Recovery by Matt Logan Speaks. I am Matt Logan. However, I'm not going to be your host. Our host for this podcast is Sherry Irvin, who has personal, unfortunate experience with addiction and abuse, but she has been in recovery for more than 8 years now. Part of Matt Logan Speaks, we want to just share other people's stories in the hopes that it will help you through your day, that it's just another tool in your toolbox to get you through the day. So please help me welcome your host, Sherry Irvin.
Hi, everyone. I have special guest star with me today, Jackie LeTourneau. And Jackie is a woman living in long-term recovery from a cocaine addiction. Jackie also has a bachelor's degree from Purdue University in psychology. Yes. And just recently got your licensure for the LACD. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm so proud to announce that Jackie will be celebrating 21 years of clean time. That is absolutely amazing. And she still continues to share her experience, strength, and hope. So thank you so much for being here. And
thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you could just kind of go through and tell us how your journey started, a short version of it, and what you're what you're doing now, and what your future goals are going to be.
Okay. Well, let's see. I like to talk, so the short version is going to be difficult for me to tell you right off the bat. Let's see. So I am the middle child of three. I have an older brother, and I had a younger sister. She passed away 3.5 years ago of ovarian cancer. So that was quite a hurdle in our family. We grew up with our mom, single parent. She had divorced my dad when I was about 3 years old, and she just worked full time. My dad actually passed away from acute and chronic alcoholism when I was 6. He lived in Milwaukee, and we lived in St. Paul, Minnesota. I was really young. It's very vague to me, the details of that. I remember that my mom was very sad. What happened after that was that my mom, part of the reason she had divorced him is because he liked to drink. He owned his own carpet business. He laid carpet, and after work he would just go drink, and he wouldn't come home a lot. So she needed more security and more participation. And after he died, I think that just threw her into a grief spiral that she was unprepared for. And she began drinking and kind of picked up where he left off. So she was working full time at a factory, Rayette. They made Aquanet hairspray, if you remember that. And she moved us to a small town named Vadnais Heights. It's near White Bear Lake, Minnesota. We lived in a small trailer court. And she just worked full time, and she drank after work. So we did not see Mom very much. She made connections in the neighborhood, so we had neighbors to go to. Back then, you'd go to the neighbor and borrow an egg or a cup of sugar or, whatever you needed. I don't see that too much anymore. In my neighborhood, I could do that because I'm a homeowner and we have neighbors that we know. So I started to use alcohol and marijuana at the age of 8. Due to lack of parental supervision there. It was actually my babysitter, we called her. She was across the street, and she would keep an eye on us. She was about 15 or 16 at the time. And I remember sitting in my living room, and there was a lot of giggling and thinking it would be fun to get the kids high. So we smoked marijuana and drank beer. And I remember thinking, wow, I feel really dizzy, and this is a different feeling. Meanwhile, my feelings every day were like, I don't feel loved. I feel like I'm in a different kind of life than maybe the kids I go to school with. They all had parents that were together, married. I compared myself a lot to other people. So all my friends live in houses. I live in a trailer court. They all come from well-to-do families that are tightly knitted together. Mine is just kind of out there and it exists. I believed everyone looked better than I did. They dressed better than I did. They had, toys and all the things that they wanted. We would go camping up north as a family vacation every summer to Brainerd. And now I look back on it and it was rather fun and funny, but at the time I wanted Disney World like the rest of my friends. So I didn't feel like I could talk about my family vacations and things at school. My mom would pile us all in a van and we're going up north. She's very resourceful. She'd have a pickle bucket with a toilet seat on top of it and a cover. We were not stopping on the way to Brainerd. She was not going to bring kids in the store. Apparently we acted like kids, and she did not appreciate that. So I remember that now as being fun, and back then it was, just embarrassing. Let's see, so that's how life went. The neighborhood kids would come over to our house and they would throw parties and we would be involved. So I started smoking cigarettes at that age too, at 8. I was a regular pack-a-day smoker by the age of 12. And I didn't care to drink very much because everything in my family, on both sides of the family, always included alcohol. And I seen the way that people acted and it didn't really intrigue me. So again, I wanted to be different. So I would try other things. And I went through the realm, I understand a lot of people experiment with, chemicals as they're growing up. And some people don't, which is great. But by junior high, I had already gotten into like inhalants, this White Cross Speed, they called it then, not sure what it is now. I did LSD and then cocaine. I had tried that a few times as a teenager, and it didn't work, I guess is how we would say it. Later on, through psychology, I found out about that, why it doesn't work. Our body is actually set up to fight off toxins that are not supposed to be in our body. So the first few times that you try chemicals at that age, it maybe won't work because your body actually takes over and fights it off, which I thought was pretty neat. So that set me up to think, well, I've done that before. That's not a problem. It doesn't even really do anything. I'll just be cool like everyone else. Meanwhile, I tried to keep it together because my comparing myself to everyone else, I didn't want to be like the other girls in my neighborhood. And by this time, we moved from White Bear Lake to the east side of St. Paul, which was a little rougher area. I fell right in with the kids at school that were smoking in the bathroom and skipping school and wanting to feel a part of and belong to something. I skipped over a lot. I was thinking, I don't want to talk about all the traumas because, I've gotten through those. But also as a child, my mom would bring people home from the bar because she was very codependent and felt sorry for everyone. And a few times I had been molested by the people that, I'd wake up and there'd be someone behind me or with their, touching me. And I would just immediately freeze up, and then I'd get up and go to the bathroom, and I'd just stay in the bathroom until, they went away in my eyes. So I remember just putting that stuff away, like, wow, that's what happens to people like me that live in families like this. And I just thought that was the life I was born into, so I needed to do like everyone else, don't talk about it, and keep moving. Although no one ever told me to do that, I just gathered that from my own beliefs. So junior high, started skipping school, and just, I don't want to say I was a troublemaker. I was trying to be like everyone else. So I got into some mischief, but nothing too horrible. I didn't obtain like a criminal record or anything. I did want to belong so deeply that one girl had been upset with another girl for talking to her boyfriend or something, and she asked me if I would beat her up for her. And I said, well, sure, To me, I thought that makes points with the cool kids. And I actually got into a physical altercation with this. It wasn't an altercation. She didn't fight back. And I just kept hitting her, and it was like this rage came out inside of me. You know, and I attribute that to my lack of knowledge, self-confidence, you know, my environment. And what happened from that is I ended up being put on probation, and I had to pay restitution for her bill to go to the doctor's office. It had like split a blood vessel in her eye, and I didn't feel good about that. I felt like, okay, I achieved what my so-called new friends wanted me to achieve, but inside I knew that wasn't good, and I didn't feel good about that. So I know that I used more around that time too, which led me to not go to school, and I had a probation officer and a truancy officer, and they would often come to my house and get me out of bed and tell me, you know, you're going to school. And I thought, well, you know, I'll appease you. You can do your job. I'll pack, you know, get up and go through the motions. But I never really invested myself into any of maybe what I now know as opportunities to change. But I just thought this is the normal protocol. You get in trouble. You don't go to school. You go to a foster home. You go to a shelter home. And each one was a little different. Sometimes I'd stay the night, and sometimes I stayed till after dinner and everyone went to bed, and then I'd leave. And it just depends on, you know, what was going on. We rode the city bus a lot then, because up in the cities it runs 24 hours, which was, I look back on that now, that was very unsafe to do. But again, I thought, you know, I had a self-complex, and I thought, well, I'm too ugly, nobody's ever going to bother me. But then I'd get off the bus and I'd run as fast as I could. So, yeah. I went on to start working full-time when I was 15, and I decided that school wasn't very important if I was just going to have to work full-time anyway. So I dropped out of high school, and I was working, became a shift leader. I believe that was at Super America, and I was there a few years, and I wanted to be promoted from shift leader to assistant manager. I think I was about 18 by this time, and they told me I couldn't progress in the job because I didn't have a high school diploma. And so I thought, this is going to be an issue. You know, I better go back and obtain this high school diploma. So I enrolled in night school, and I started going to night school. I completed that when I was 21. I got a diploma from White Bear Lake, and that was important to me because you know, I thought there was a difference between a GED and a high school diploma, and now I just know it doesn't matter as long as you have one. It means you put the effort into it and you actually went back and learned a few things. So, again, my comparing things, that was something that I did, and it was a defect I really had to work on throughout my early recovery. So fast forward, I fall in love because I think, okay, next I have to fall in love, get married, buy a house, have a baby. So I fall in love, I get pregnant, we move into a duplex, and my dreams did not play out the way that I had imagined. My love, who is the father of my oldest child, she's 24 now, he decided he didn't want to work at the pizza factory anymore, the pizza bowling alley, and he started dealing marijuana. And I thought, ooh, you know, I want to be one of those people that don't have a criminal record because all my friends, they have criminal records. I need to work for a living because they live on welfare. And here I am associating myself with people I believe that had less so I could feel like more. I didn't learn that either until I got into recovery. And I thought, oh, dear Lord, if there is one, I hope this is a phase and he'll get through this. Nope, he started getting held up at gunpoint and getting robbed, and I was afraid people were going to come to my house and, you know, hurt us. I'm pregnant at this time, and I had my oldest daughter in the middle of February. It was very cold. Went to the hospital, had her, and I remember the night I brought her home. It was so bitter cold, and the duplex was very cold. I don't, think we kept the heat on because we wanted to save money, right? So it was dark and cold, and I remember walking in the door and putting her car seat down, and there was a knock at the back door. And it was one of the clients for marijuana. And I thought, is this really what my life is? I want more than this. I should be, I've seen it on TV, these happy families, and I might have run across a few of them, but there should be happiness and light and warmth and things like that, especially bringing a new baby home. So I decided this is not what I want for her and I. And I packed up and moved out. She was 3 weeks old. I had worked at a hospital up in the cities in the kitchen for about 3 years at that time. So I had a stable job, and the employee assistance program helped me to move out and get a place. And what happened is I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to be. I didn't know how to be a mom, because my mom worked all the time and drank the rest. And I knew that I had this precious little baby, and I wanted to take care of her the proper way. So I went to work every day. Her grandma babysat for me. Excuse me. And I started to think, what do I do for fun? What do moms do for fun? So maybe I should go out on the weekends. I'll go drinking and dancing. I don't know how to do either very well, but I'll do that. So I started doing that, and what happened is after a few times of that, somebody introduced me to cocaine in the bathroom again, and I thought, I did that when I was 16, and it's not a big deal. I'll be cool and I'll fit in. And when I did it, something happened, and I was alive. I felt really... even though I had been drinking, it woke me up. I felt alive. Suddenly I could dance, I thought I could dance like Shakira. I was a star. So I found out I had bad knees, and they dislocate whenever I would drink and dance. So apparently that is not my skill either, neither of them. But that's what I did. So I started doing cocaine a little bit here and there, snorting, and then... I think after a few months I met somebody who smoked it, and then he became my new boyfriend. And so, and once we started smoking cocaine, everything became so unimportant. Recovery talks about that it's a selfish disease and a very self-centered thing. I didn't believe that when I got into recovery. I thought everyone was crazy. I'm the most selfless person that you could ever meet. I'm very kind, giving, and generous, and I was to a fault, but I also at that time only did things for other people that would benefit me in the end. But I wouldn't talk about that because I was very honest, in my opinion. And I had beliefs like that. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous calls it half measures. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. And when I learned about that in recovery, I look back and I'm like, yep, everything was on my terms. I will be dishonest as long as you don't know. I will lie, steal, and cheat as long as there are no witnesses. I learned that I actually was a criminal in my own mind just because I had not been caught by the law. So I gave up. I thought, this smoking cocaine is really fun. I think I'll quit my job. Now I'm there almost nearly 5 years, and that was important. I would have invested in the company, but not knowing any of that, I think I was 23 at the time. I gave up my apartment to move into my car, because who needs an apartment, that, and all that stuff. I had a everything must go sale. I sold everything in the apartment to move into the car with my fabulous boyfriend, who was a career criminal, and I gave my daughter to her dad, and I thought, I've been doing this really well for a year, it's your turn, and I just went off the rails. There's a quote in the Narcotics Anonymous basic text, which I love, all kinds of educational literature, which they both are. And it says, the end of the good times is when we were placed in situations that allowed us to use more frequently. And I know that was exactly the point, is when I let go of the apartment and the job, and it was a free-for-all. So I started using heavily with this boyfriend, and eventually started intravenously using cocaine. And it became a job. It was a chore. It wasn't fun anymore. The relationship became very violent, physically abusive, and I was too prideful, I think, at first to reach out for help. I thought, nope, I'm going to pull myself up on my bootstraps. I'm going to get it together. So I went to my brother's, and I'm like, I need help, and I need to stay with you. And he said, okay. Well, after about 2 nights, I think I tried to rob him. He had a duplex, and I tried to break into the upstairs. And he said the next day, you got to go. I'm like, okay, I'll clean up. I'll get a job. I'll get a paycheck. I'll be out in about 2 weeks. He said, no, you have to go today. I do not want you in my home anymore. And I thought, well, that's not how our family rolls, You could abuse each other to no end, and it's family. They have to love you and take you back. But my brother grew a boundary and dropped me off at treatment. And when the lady who did the intake, she was doing the intake, doing my assessment, now that I know what that is, she put her pencil down and she said, you're not ready, so I'm not going to admit you. And I didn't ask why. I didn't know how she magically knew this. And then I went out on the porch, and I sat on the swing, and I was crying. And I think I asked to use the phone, because back then we didn't have cell phones. And I was 24. And I asked my brother to come back and get me, and he said no. And then the van driver of the treatment walked up, and he said, what's wrong? And I said, the lady won't let me in. She says I'm not ready. But my boyfriend, he went to prison for stealing, and I don't really know how to do that without him. I was the driver, and he did all the dirty work. And now I feel desperate. I need drugs, because they won't let me into treatment. I don't have a place to stay. I'm not very pretty. I can't prostitute, is what my thought was. Because you have to be really glamorous for that. That's what I learned. And so I thought, I'm really screwed here. He went in and talked to the treatment director, and she ended up allowing me to stay, and I took advantage of that. But at the time, I thought, this is what you do when you get homeless and you get jobless. You just go to treatment. It looks good. You regroup, and you get it back together. And I thought, I'll do all that. I'll get a place, and then I'll teach my boyfriend how to use responsibly when he gets out. Thank the heavens above, or the universe, or whatever, that I did what the people told me to do, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. It was the next thing. So after treatment, they said, you need to go to a halfway house, and they chose Rochester, Minnesota. And I thought, I don't even know where that is. And I thought, well, I'm homeless, jobless, penniless. I don't have anything going on. I'll go there. So I went there for 3 months, and my goal was not to stay clean, but one of the rules was you had to stay clean in order to stay in the home. So I thought, okay, well, I don't want to be homeless, so I'll follow the rules, and I did.
Yeah, and fast forwarding now, look where you're at now.
Yes.
And now you're going, you went off to school.
So I went to school. We'll start there, because I wasn't too keen on this whole recovery thing. I thought, okay, well, 6 months into it, I got my own place, but I had learned enough from them forcing me to go to these 12-step meetings, get a sponsor, do all the things that this 12-step program did. And I did that, and by the grace of God, I looked at myself one day and I thought, well, you might not want this, but you sure in the heck don't want to go back to that. So why don't you just keep doing what you're doing, do the next right thing. I enrolled in school because I wasn't real keen on the recovery people yet, and I wasn't going back to my old neighborhood. And then I started out in the human services field, and it took me from 2001 until last May, 2019. So over an 18-year span, I slowly obtained my bachelor's degree, and I have 7 years of schooling within that. And I was going to fast track it. just like recovery. I was just going to fast track it, graduate, and be done. And that didn't happen. I began to learn what life is and what a joyous ride that it is. And it's a journey, not a destination. And I don't have to compare myself to other people. I am uniquely my own person. And I worked a lot with other people through recovery, sponsorship and sponsee, and everything that the 12-step programs had to offer, I took advantage of. Well, now, being in the counseling field, a lot has changed over the years, and there are other pathways to recovery. I've learned that. It took a long time to learn that, because once I committed to 12-step recovery, which is evidence-based, it's proven to work, and I would recommend that to everyone, but it isn't something that everyone wants to do. So my job now as a counselor is to help people find what it is in their life that they want to live for, or what they're motivated to do. Maybe it's just that they're homeless and they don't want to be homeless. I started there. We can start there. And then hopefully, if you, what do they say, bring your butt and your mind will follow. So do the next right thing, and the next right things tend to happen.
Well, the things that you've helped a lot of, I know for a fact that you've helped a lot of women out, a lot of young women, and they have benefited from your story. The whole common thread. We're different, but there's that common thread. And you keep continuing to share your experience, strength, and hope. And I really appreciate all the work that you have done within the community. I do think that that's awesome that you're looking at branching maybe into a more of an assessor role and finding those pathways for other people to find their own way. So it has indeed been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for sharing your time with me and with our audience. You have so much to give, and I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors. Thank you so much, Jackie LeTourneau.
Thank you, Sherry. I do want to mention one thing. Ever since we met, I've admired you. I love your hair. You always have the most miraculous hair. And you really exude, I am this person and this is who I am, and I don't need to compare myself with anyone. And I really love that about you. I think that's fabulous.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast of Addiction Abuse Recovery, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm sure you did, as I did. I want you to know that if you want to follow along, just go ahead and hit subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Apple Podcast. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Just search out Matt Logan Speaks. We have all kinds of great content for you. Hit the notifications button so that when something new comes up, you're the first to know. Have a great day.